Some stories just feel like they were written for a movie. They've got it all: a charismatic, almost messianic founder, billions upon billions of dollars in cash, and a fall from grace so fast and so spectacular it became an instant legend. Today, we're diving into the rise and ruin of WeWork, the company that promised to change the world by basically throwing a $47 billion office party.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just a crazy business story. It's about a huge what if. What if this whole remote work revolution we're living through wasn't a sure thing? What if one company got this close to making the office so cool, so irresistible, that the idea of work from home might have just fizzled out before it even started? That question, well, it's at the very heart of the WeWork saga.
So, to really get how this all went down, we have to rewind. We've got to go back to the very beginning, to the core idea that launched WeWork into the stratosphere. It was a really powerful vision, and it was born from a problem I think a lot of us can relate to. Okay, so picture the office world before WeWork. For so many people, it was pretty bleak. We're talking about endless landscapes of gray, isolating cubicles, soul-crushing commutes to these sterile office parks in the middle of nowhere, and just a real lack of human connection. The founders of WeWork, they looked at all that loneliness, that craving for something more than just a desk and a Wi-Fi password, and they saw a massive, massive opportunity. So what was WeWork really? On paper, yeah, it was a real estate company, but that was never ever the pitch. WeWork wasn't selling desks, it was selling an experience. It was selling community on a global scale, a tribe. They claimed they were on a mission to completely revolutionize the very idea of work. And for a while there, the world didn't just buy it, it poured billions of dollars into keeping the party going. And oh man, did people buy in. Which brings us to our second act, this explosive, almost unbelievable period of growth. This wasn't just a company getting bigger, it was like a movement, a phenomenon, fueled by what seemed like an infinite supply of cash and this really cult-like atmosphere. So yeah, welcome to the party. This quote from founder Adam Neumann, it just captures the whole vibe perfectly. See, it was never about office space. It was about a world-changing mission. And this huge, grand, messianic vision, that's what hooked investors. It's what attracted all the best talent. And it's what made everyone believe that WeWork was the future. And all that hype, it led to this, an absolutely staggering number. At its peak, WeWork was valued at $47 billion. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that was more than huge established companies like Marriott or Delta Airlines. It was a tech company valuation for a company that, as many would soon find out, wasn't really a tech company at all. The hype was just completely off the charts. And this really gets to the core of it all. The culture was the product. WeWork spaces weren't just offices. They were destinations. You had in-house baristas making your coffee, you had kombucha and beer on tap, and you had these massive, mandatory summer camp festivals for the whole company. The entire point was to create this thank God it's Monday vibe. It wasn't your job, it was your whole lifestyle. But, a party that wild, it has to end sometime, right? As the company got bigger and bigger, so did the scrutiny. And once people started to look a little closer, past the free beer and the cool neon signs, they started to see some pretty serious cracks forming in the glass walls of the WeWork empire.
This right here, this is the fatal flaw, the whole disconnect that brought everything crashing down. The pitch was always that WeWork was this super scalable tech company, like a Google or a Facebook for office space. But the reality, it was a pretty traditional real estate business. It was signing these incredibly expensive, long-term leases on buildings and then just hoping it could rent out that space for the short term at a profit. That is not a tech model. It's a super high-risk rental game with enormous costs. And once journalists and Wall Street analysts really started digging in, the red flags weren't just there, they were everywhere. The company was losing billions with a B of dollars every single year. Stories about the founders' erratic behavior started to leak out. The corporate structure was this tangled-up mess that seemed, frankly, designed to make the founder rich. And this is a big one, the whole business model had only ever existed in a booming economy. Nobody had a clue what would happen if things went south. And that brings us to the climax of the story, the great unraveling. See, when WeWork decided it was finally time to go public, to sell its shares on the stock market, all those problems that were hidden behind the curtain were suddenly thrown into the harsh light of day.
And the collapse, it was faster and more brutal than anyone could have possibly imagined.
I mean, just look at the speed of this thing. It is breathtaking. It all kicks off in August of 2019 when the company files its paperwork to go public, and that's when the world sees the true scale of the losses. The public backlash was instant. By September, the IPO is called off, and the founder and CEO is forced out. And by October, just a month later, that $47 billion valuation had crashed to less than $8 billion. A whole empire just evaporated in less than 60 days.
This was the tipping point. You have to understand, for years, WeWork sold its story in private meetings to a handful of big investors who wanted to believe. But the IPO paperwork, this public document called an S-1, that forced the company to tell the truth to everybody. It was basically a public confession of its finances, and it confirmed what many suspected: the billion-dollar party was officially and finally over. So after all that, what's left? After the crash, after the headlines faded away, what is the legacy of this corporate ghost? What, if anything, does its incredible story tell us about how we work now? Visually, the story kind of ends right here. You see that massive bar, that $47 billion peak, which is really a monument to pure hype and venture capital hope. And then you see the reality right next to it after the collapse. It's one of the most shocking, rapid destructions of value in modern corporate history. It's a perfect picture of a dream that just dissolved into thin air.
And that brings us right back to our opening question. WeWork's entire reason for being was to make the office so amazing, so compelling, that nobody would ever want to work from home. Its collapse was, in essence, a total failure of that vision. And then, in one of the craziest twists of historical irony, just a few months later, the pandemic forced the entire world into the biggest work-from-home experiment ever. The very thing WeWork was built to prevent suddenly became the new normal.
So I'll just leave you with this thought. WeWork completely failed to sell us on this idea of a mandatory physical community built around our jobs. But now, in our new world of remote and hybrid work, aren't we all still kind of searching for that same sense of connection? Was the problem WeWork identified, that feeling of loneliness and isolation at work, was it actually real, even if their solution was a complete disaster? That's a question I think is